Tanya is someone who is still very, very young. She's at LSE in London. She's still a student. She's still studying. But she struggled with her mental health in her very, very early teens. As I mentioned, she's at university. She's in her final year, but of course was at university during the pandemic, a time when students were suddenly, like lots of children, having to do their studying online. Lectures were no longer in person, and none of the usual rhythms of university life were there anymore. And as someone who went to university in this very city quite a few years ago, I cannot even begin to imagine what it would have been like to be alone in your room in a halls of residence when you're having to avoid any kind of social contact, because for anyone who's been to university will know social contact, as well as a little bit of learning, is a key part of university life. But Tanya, through her own experiences, but also seeing the experiences of those around her, could see that other students were struggling. And she decided to do something about it. And she's done something incredible. I'm not going to tell you any more about what she's done because she's here to tell you her story herself. Please give a very warm welcome to the amazing Tanya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Simon, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. It's just really great to be in a room full of people that care so deeply about mental well-being, as I do myself, and want to make a difference. So as Simon said, I'm a final year university student at the London School of Economics. For anyone who cares, I study international relations with Mandarin. So I started university in 2019, just before COVID was like a thing. I remember when it was like the talk of the halls that like there's something going around in China and no one is really sure exactly what's going on. So I had 3 months of, I'd say, real uni before I moved back home and I started studying from home. So I definitely understand what it's like being a student during the pandemic. It almost feels like university never happened, or whether you're at school or college, like it never ever happened. And a bit backstory about myself, I have always struggled with my mental health. So growing up, I was always described as like a sensitive person. I would always be crying about little things. And I just kind of reflected when I started university that no one taught me anything about mental health. I'd heard this buzzword mental health, but what did it actually mean? So it was only when I started struggling myself, when I started having intrusive thoughts, I started feeling negative about everything, I wasn't enjoying the things that I used to always enjoy, was when I really started to think about why was I feeling this way. And I remember having conversations with my parents. I'm extremely lucky that I have such supportive parents, and I had conversations with them of, you know, I just feel like I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm not sure why I feel like that. And it's extremely difficult, I'm sure, for any parent to hear that, or for anyone to hear that. If it's your friend saying that, it's a family member saying that, or even if it's a stranger saying that. But that's the harsh reality of it, is that some of us feel that way, and we don't know why we feel that way. And there's no education in school that tells us. So we spend years in school learning about the anatomy of a body, learning about equations and how to solve them, but no one actually tells us how to take care of our mental well-being, which is crazy if you think about it, because our mental well-being is a constant theme in every day of our life. Anything that happens, any emotion we feel is related to our mental health, yet no one tells us, you know, how to take care of ourselves. And that's why during the pandemic, I decided that I wanted to do something about it. I had always struggled with accessing resources. So I had spoken to my local GP, I'd spoken to my university's counselling service, but nothing was really supporting me in the way that I wanted to be supported. I wasn't able to have open conversations within my friend group about what I was feeling and how I was struggling. So I decided to start something of my own. So I started off with just making digital posts to post on Instagram about, you know, what to do when you're feeling down, or like 5 tips to take care of your mental well-being every day. So I started an organization called Championing Youth Minds. And the key thing about Championing Youth Minds is that everything is youth-led. And I think that as a young person, you want to hear advice, you want to hear conversations and experiences from young people who experience the same things as yourself. And I'm going to talk a bit about kind of, you know, what mental well-being is like for students nowadays. I don't think we talk enough about the harsh reality of what young people are going through, some of the struggles that us as students have to deal with, and how you can take control over things like that and really help take care of your mental well-being on a daily basis. So I'm not going to read out every single statistic up there. I think the statistics speak for themselves, unfortunately, that is how student mental health is looking like right now. And the pandemic has made it increasingly difficult for young people to, deal with their mental health and access mental health services. It's extremely unfortunate. I've spoken to friends at university who contact the services for support and they only hear back 6 weeks later that they have to wait another 2 months to even be seen. What do young people do in that time? How do students deal with, university, dealing with studying, exams, pressure, social media? How do you deal with that when you can't even get the support that you need? Is extremely difficult. And that's something that I extremely relate with myself. I was kind of told to, unless something really serious happens, you just keep on going. And if you hit crisis point, here's a helpline, and you speak to a helpline. And I'm quite open about it. I have been on the phone sometimes with the helpline, and it's sad that sometimes you have to just, speak to a stranger for maybe like an hour to, really calm you down. But what next? What do you do afterwards? What support are you receiving afterwards? And unfortunately, there's just not that support right now. And as a young person studying from my bedroom, I can tell you that it becomes extremely lonely. There was no difference in the expectations that were expected of us. We were still expected to hand in our deadlines, still expected to somewhat have a social life. And I think the most important thing was that no one was talking about it. So when I speak to my friends, no one was openly saying that, I'm feeling lonely or I'm struggling with X, Y, Z. Everyone kind of kept it within themselves. And I think that's why an event like this today is so important, especially for students and young people, to know that they can have these conversations openly. I've sometimes had conversation with friends and they will say, I've actually felt really, really low for the last few weeks, but I didn't know who to turn to. Even though we're all there for each other when, you go for a night out or, you want to have a party or something, we're all there for each other. But when are we there for each other? When we need each other. But we just don't feel comfortable enough to have these conversations. And that's why it's so, so important that we create a space in the educational institutions that we study in for them to be able to, reach out for support and openly talk about struggles that students are dealing with. So let me talk a little bit more about what these struggles are that I'm talking about. So as you can imagine, when you're at university or you're at college or you're doing your GCSEs, the academic stress is unreal. I don't think enough people of older generations understand how difficult education has become nowadays. It's extremely, extremely competitive. I know that GCSEs and A-levels are consistently made harder every single year. More and more content's added in. I can't exactly explain why. I'm not exactly sure myself. But the fact that things are made consistently harder for young people, but there's no increase in the resources to support young people to deal with that, is extremely disheartening. And academic stress is a lot for all of us as well, but for a lot of students who move away from home, especially international students who have left their countries and their families in a completely different part of the world and are here to study, there's not enough support for them. There's also the ongoing pressure, especially during the pandemic, to keep up the standard of work alongside, challenges you may have. Perhaps you get the flu or something and you're down for a week or two. There's no provisions in place to support you if you need that extra time. There's no one to go to if you need, slightly more understanding. And I think one thing I want to emphasize is university especially can be a very, very lonely place. I think we're sold this dream that university is the best years of your life, which I'm not saying that it's not, but it's an extremely lonely place. I'm very grateful that I'm able to pick up the phone and talk to my parents, but not everyone's able to do that. And I don't think institutions understand that it becomes extremely isolating living by yourself in a room, and the rooms aren't usually big either. We really need to do more to make a safe space for young people, especially at university, to even have these conversations. I don't think anyone necessarily that would be their conversation starter with their friends, that, oh, I feel quite lonely. It's something that we've stigmatized so much as a society that we don't feel like we can talk about it. The expectations to know that we know exactly what we want in life. As a final year university student, everyone asks me, okay, and what? What are you going to do next? in all honesty, I don't know what I want to do next. Thankfully, we live in a day and age where there's so many opportunities available, but it makes it a lot harder for students and young people to work out what they actually want to do. And I think that's where social media can be a dangerous thing, is that we see so much on social media. We're exposed to so many opportunities, we see influencers, and it can become quite overwhelming to decide, what's actually for me. So that's another added pressure for young people. I'm sure everyone's trying to work out where they fit in this huge world. And the reality of it is that we might never know where we fit in and how we fit in. But we don't talk about how that, it should just be commonly accepted that it's not something we have to know necessarily. Also, work experience. So it seems increasingly difficult to find a job in this day and age. And also, I don't think that's something we talk enough about. I can say personally, I'm extremely scared about how I'm going to find a job, what that job's going to be, will I enjoy that job? And that's something I see a common theme with all my friend groups. We would have conversations and it would be, did you get that work experience? Or if you didn't get that work experience, why not? I don't know if any of you guys have the experience with application processes. They are extremely, extremely difficult. They're, very rigorous testing, understandably so, but there's a lot of stress and mental pressure that goes on just trying to obtain work experience, let alone actually step into the world of work. Just struggling with dealing with academic pressure, dealing with, wanting to have a social life. I think social media has put us in a world where we see highlights from everyone's life. We see our friends going clubbing, we see them, celebrating birthdays, celebrating events, and then sometimes we have a bit of FOMO, so fear of missing out. I think we've all experienced that. And these things accumulate, they put pressure on us. We feel more pressured to be living a life that perhaps we're not living. We always see things that perhaps we don't have, and we feel the urge or the need to want to have them, which is extremely difficult for young people to young people to deal with. And I think sometimes it's something that we don't speak about enough, of growing up in the age of social media and how many more layers that add to, your mental health and what you have to deal with. You're constantly given, stimulus and content that perhaps you may not even want to see, but it comes up and you have to deal with it, especially with what's going on in the world right now as well. The amount of news that's thrown at you just through notifications of Sky News and BBC News, you can't, it's extremely difficult to digest all of that. But then again, what are we taught when we're younger? What are we taught growing up? That when you are in this situation, this is how you deal with it. So, as I mentioned before, it's extremely difficult as a young person, especially as a student, to talk about your mental well-being. And, there's so many reasons behind that, but some common themes are the fear of speaking up. If I speak up, will that be a label that's attached to me? Will I be known as that person who reached out for support? I know as a young person that I've spoken to friends who are worried about seeking mental health support because they're worried that when they go into the workplace, their employer will know that they have mental health issues, which I think is extremely sad that is stopping some people from obtaining support. Secondly, stigma. So as mental health is not openly spoken about in our community, especially for young people. A lot of times, we want to come across as we have everything put together, we're very strong, confident. And sometimes that's not the case, and that's okay. But we feel fear. We feel like we don't want to upset the people around us. We don't want to let our parents down that we're, studying, but we're struggling so much. And it can be extremely difficult and isolating. And thirdly, shame. For some reason, we have so much shame talking about mental health. I'm standing up here, I don't feel shame talking about it, and I don't think anyone should feel, any shame surrounding talking about their mental health. Do we feel shame if we broke our arm and we spoke about how badly our broken arm hurts? No, we wouldn't. So why the hell do we feel shame about talking about our mental health? And that's the thing, we need to have greater conversations and just normalize that. And the only way we can do that is by talking. So for example, talking today, after you leave this event today, having more conversations within your friend group, within your household, within anyone you meet in the future, having conversations and just being like, it's okay to talk about mental health. So ways that you can do this is, having, as I said, having open conversation with family and friends, but also creating a safe and non-judgmental space for yourself and for other people. So, the next time your friend might be feeling a little bit down, instead of maybe jumping to the conclusion that they're, just a bit moody today, perhaps just making sure that, you just mention to them, I won't judge you if there's anything wrong, or, if you're not feeling it so great. The smallest things can make all the difference for people. I know myself that sometimes I've had conversations on some of my lowest days with friends or with family, and it's just one thing that they say that has made such a big difference to me. And we all have the power to make such a big impact in people's lives in ways that we don't even know. And I trust you that just by saying you can talk to me, or the door's always open if you want to have a conversation, can really, really make an impact to someone's life. If you're a student, speaking to your school, speaking to your university's wellbeing department. So every university and every school should have someone responsible for mental wellbeing. So universities usually have a counselling service that you can sign up to. And I really, really recommend that if you are struggling or want to speak about your mental health in any way or shape or form, to contact your university's wellbeing service. Unfortunately, there may be a short waiting list, but they can signpost you to different resources, useful websites, useful apps, self-care tips that you can use whilst you're waiting to receive that support. And it's a great way for you to understand how you can balance things such as your studies, social life, as well as any challenges you may be dealing with your mental health. And then lastly, reach out to your GP. I reached out to my local GP. It was quite a daunting thing to do, and I can understand that it might be quite a scary thing to do, but they can refer you to some amazing resources that I accessed. Yes Counselling, which is youth counselling, and that really helped me learn some CBT methods that I use now on a daily basis to deal with any difficulties that I may have. Or you can even self-refer yourself to counselling services. So if you just Google the local area you're in, counselling services for young people, the NHS has great lists of different organisations, and if you can self-refer yourself, there will be links that you can use. You'll have a consultation where you can just speak to them, describe exactly what you're dealing with, and they can then signpost you to the appropriate support that you may need. And one important thing as well is looking after your own mental well-being on a daily basis. I think we're so busy and we have so much on a daily basis to deal with that sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. And as important as our physical health is, our mental health is as important. So we take vitamins and we take supplements for our physical health. We go to the gym, we make sure we're eating healthy. The way we do that, we also need to make sure that we're taking care of our mental health as well. And there's some really simple and easy ways you can do that. And I think just being aware of your mental health and making sure that you're being mindful of the content you're exposing yourself to, the people you're around. Are the people you're around making you happy? If you're studying, is your degree making you happy? Maybe it's not, and that's okay. Maybe that's a sign that you should rethink changing to something that you might enjoy. But all of these things can really help work out, small changes that you can make in your daily life and how they can help you. A really, really interesting thing for me was changing my study technique. So I would usually sit down for hours on end without any breaks and just study. I would make flashcards and I would sit there writing everything down really beautifully, highlighting it. And I thought that that was helping me retain information. But the reality of it is I would get extremely burnt out even before exams started. And that was a really bad idea because it meant that when exams did come around, I didn't have the energy. I was extremely tired and drained all the time. But there's this amazing technique called Pomodoro, and I'm sure you guys must have heard of it. It's 25 minutes. So you set yourself a timer for 25 minutes. You do whatever questions or work that you want to do in those 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And you do that however many intervals that you want to do, but it's a great way to make sure that you're focusing for those 25 minutes, but you're getting the break that you need in between. And for me, that's meant that I'm able to balance my social life. I'm able to balance making sure I'm achieving my grades, getting my deadlines done, but I'm also not burning out. And I think burnout is a really important thing to be mindful of as well. Study groups. So if you do, maybe a reading heavy subject, you could have a study group. You could share the readings out with your friends and make sure that, everything's gotten done, but you're not feeling the pressure of having to do too much yourself. We're using mental well-being support such as apps. So there's some amazing apps out there. Me Too is a great app. So it's just a forum where you can signpost any mental health questions you have, if you're struggling at all, and everything's moderated by mental health professionals. So the advice that you will receive will be from certified mental health professionals. And they also have an incredible directory of other mental health services that you can access. So I definitely recommend having a little, search. NHS have like a list of apps that you can use on their webpage, or just type it into the App Store or Google Play Store, and I'm sure you'll come across some amazing amazing apps. I really recommend trying meditation or mindfulness. I think these are words that you must have heard, but just simple things like if you're feeling anxious or, you might be feeling a bit stressed, just focus on your breathing. So I had this really amazing quote from Jay Shetty, which was that at any point you feel any emotion, the one thing that changes is your breath. So when you're happy, your breathing increases. When you're sad, your breathing changes. When you're angry, your breathing changes. And I think that's so amazing that now that we know that, we can leverage that. So the next time we feel anxious or we feel scared, we can just focus on our breathing, take 3 deep breaths, and before you realize you'll be, back into the moment again. Journal your thoughts and feelings. So what I do every single morning is I ask myself, how am I feeling today? What's my plan for today? What's a little message for myself and what am I grateful for? And I cannot explain to you how much that's helped me understand myself better. So the next time I feel like I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed, I can probably figure out that, yeah, I am a bit irritable today. And I can plan my day around that. And I think that's such an amazing thing you can do. It takes 5 minutes maximum of your morning, but it can make all the difference. Reach out for support and help. So like I said, your university will have a wellbeing support service. Your school will have a wellbeing support service. Friends, family, anyone that you can leverage. Mental health organizations that are there for support. Please, please, please do reach out to them. I cannot express enough. They are all there to help you. You are not alone. And I promise you that they will help in some way, shape or form. Find healthy coping mechanisms that work for you. Maybe it'll be journaling, maybe it'll be mindfulness, maybe it'll be using one of those apps which I mentioned. And engage with self-care, books, podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts has lots of podcasts about mental well-being, stress relief. Try some meditation on a podcast. I think that's a really great idea. But all in all, there's so many resources out there. Just explore, just have fun with them. Some will work for you, some may not work for you, and that's okay. But everyone's different and different things work for different people. And finally, I just want to leave you guys with one message, and that's remember that you are not alone in how you're feeling. So many students, if not probably all students, feel the same. All young people, there are elements of loneliness, elements of pressure, elements of just feeling like you can't cope with how much is expected of you. And I'm sorry you feel that way, but I just want you to know that you're not alone in how you feel and that there are people out there who care and can support you. So please do reach out. I know how lonely it can be, feeling like you're the only one who feels like this. There's no one out there. No one cares, and there's only a few ways out of this, and they're not the right ways out of this. So if there's anything you can take away from this, is that you are not alone. One simple Google search can expose you to so many amazing resources and people out there who are ready to help. So please just remember that you're not alone. Thank you.